Howdy, welcome back to RC Restomod. Today we're going to talk a little bit about chassis setup. Chassis setup is super important no matter what kind of racing you're doing, whether it's drag racing, off-road, oval, burnout, doesn't matter what it is. Chassis setup is super important, and I'm not going to try to tell you the settings that you need to get on your car because that just wouldn't be fair, because no matter what kind of racing you do or what surface you race on, even the dirt, like if you're racing dirt oval, the dirt in one place may be highly packed clay that blue grooves, and you need a different tire in different settings than you do at some place where the dirt has a tendency to be kind of loose like it is at our track. Anyway, what we're going to talk about instead are some concepts. I want you to understand some concepts that will affect the way your car handles. And the first of these, I need to have the wheel off of it to demonstrate. All right. Okay, the first concept we're going to talk about is caster. And what caster is, when you turn the front wheels, there's an axis that the wheels turn on, and in this particular instance with the two-wheel drive slash, it's determined by the pin that goes up through the lower A arm into this knuckle and up through where the bearing carrier turns. And as you can see on a slash, it's very steep, much more than on other RC cars and definitely more than on road cars, but it's pretty well parallel to the edge of this piece right here. So at about that angle right there. Now on some higher end race vehicles, you can actually adjust camber. I'm not smart enough to tell you what that does or does not do for you, but I can tell you that on a slash, camber cannot be adjusted, so we're just going to have to live with what it is. So let's try to, hey, that went all the way on. Putting the wheels on the non-driven axles is always a challenge. Alright, the next question would be, why do we have caster? Well, by that caster angle being laid back, the weight of the car is trying to push the front part of the tire in. The upper front part of the tire is being pushed in by the weight of the rest of the car, and that's true on both sides. And what that does is cause the steering to self-center based on just the mechanics of the weight of the car. Your servo also centers, but it wouldn't be fair to ask the servo to do all the work, and its little gears probably wouldn't handle it. So some mechanical centering is very beneficial, and it's just what we need there. The next concept is camber. And what camber is how the tires are leaned in or out. And as you can see on this side, we have almost none, and on this side we got quite a bit. Now, how would we measure that? It's real easy to look up setup sheets online and find out what people recommend it to be for different situations, but how do we measure it? Well, you need a special tool. This is a camber gauge. There are cheaper versions of it, there are more expensive versions of it, but that's what this is. And I learned at the track last night that what this chassis really wants is about 1.5 degrees. And it wants this side to be leaned in about 1.5 degrees, and it wants this side to be, and what we do, we call that negative camber. When the top is in, it's negative. When the top is out, it's positive. So we want negative 1.5 over here and positive 1.5 over here. So I'll go to my gauge and I will set it for positive 1.5 degrees. Tighten down the thumb screw. And then the upper link is what determines your camber. Matter of fact, in the books, they refer to it as a camber link. So we'll turn this camber link until we get to the desired setting. All right, so we'll take our camber gauge and slide it in, and it barely touches. I actually went just a little bit too far, or did I? Something to think about with the slash. Traxxas makes a fine car. It's definitely a good basher, and it's as good as everybody else's in a spec class. But there's a lot of slop in the front end of a Traxxas car. I mean, that wheel wobbles quite a bit in both directions. And we have to think about the fact that when we turn, it's going to be pushing to the right hand side because we're doing oval. So what I'm going to do is take this hand and pull the front of the car that way and then check it. Now I don't have enough. So let's go a little bit more. All right, that's right where it wants to be, because we discovered at the track last night I played with the camber on my Mud Boss, which is a very similar chassis to this, that 1.5 degrees is its happy place. So that's where we're going to start with this car. Now in the rear it likes to be about 3 degrees, but the process is identical to the front, so I'm not going to bother showing you that. The third concept you need to understand is toe. And what toe is, if it's towed in, the wheels point at each other a little bit. If it's towed out, the front of the wheels point away from each other a little bit. If they're towed in a little bit, just a little bit, too much is bad, but just a little bit, this wheel is pushing the car to my right just a little bit, and this tire is pushing it. But the push is offset and slight, but it makes the car very stable in a straight line. And that's what you're going to find on street cars and on a ready to run when you pull it out of the box. And the rear end on a slash has some toe in. But that is not adjustable either, but the front is. So what we're going to do is we'll take this stick here. This is a toe gauge, and it telescopes. So we find a place on the tire, and what I will use on the tire, you can see there's a wide tread block and a short tread block. I'm going to go to that notch in the short tread block on the outside on either wheel. So there it is on that side. There it is on that side. Keep that. All right, then I'm going to move my toe gauge to the front of the car. And when I get it to the front, we'll line it up the same way on a short tread. I'm going to line up the pointer on a short tread block. And then, I'm not going to be able to see it, but I'll show you what's going on. We take our calipers and we can measure the distance between that pointer and our reference point. And we want our front end to be towed out just a little bit. And that's what you're usually going to want on a racing car, because stability is not that important, because you're not going down the interstate with one hand up on the wheel. you're driving with both hands. So if it's a little unstable on the straightaway, that's no big deal, because when you get to the corner, when you turn, if you think about it, if you were riding a bicycle and you went right up by the curb, you'd turn the wheel a lot. If you were out in the middle of the street, you'd turn a lot less to make the same corner. Well, your car is doing both at the same time. So you really need the inside wheel to be turning more than the outside wheel. There's ways you can do that with real cars and very custom stuff, but with what we're required to use, there is no way to do that. So by towing it out just a little bit, when we go into the corner, they're going to turn the same number of degrees, but that's going to leave this one turned more to the left than this one is, so it can follow a tighter path, and the car will make a smoother run through the corner. So it'll help you in the corners, hurt you in the straights, but corners is where you win and lose in oval track racing, so we're willing to sacrifice a little bit of straightaway stability for a smoother turn. So that's tow. All right. The last concept is something we talk a lot about in off-road racing. I don't know about other forms of racing. All I know is off-road and dirt oval, and I don't know that much about those. But I do know in off-road we talk an awful lot about ride height, because if you have enough, then your suspension can compress when you land. If you do not have enough, then you frame slap when you land, and that's bad. But what this does, you can slide this up and down until this little round pointer is barely touching the bottom of your car. And once you get that where you want it, you can look at, there's a pointer right here that points at a scale, and that'll give you the ride height in millimeters of your car. I'm not going to try to measure it on this one because it doesn't matter. I'm limited on what I can do, and there's no way to really raise or lower it. On a high-end off-road car, you can turn the adjusters on the, if you got threaded body shocks, you can turn the adjusters, raise it up, turn them down, and lower it. But that gets into a whole thing. But anyway, 4 concepts to setting up your suspension. You have your caster angle, your camber angle, the toe, and ride height. And if you get those all set right, you're going to have a fast car. The tools that you need to set it up, you're really going to need a camber gauge. There's really no getting around it. Don't get, the first one I bought only stood up about this high, and it didn't work on short course tires or truggy tires, and that's what I was messing with at the time. It was a pretty big disappointment. So go ahead and get one that's long enough to work on the cars that you're going to be racing. It's a huge difference. Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. Get better traction. Then you've got a gauge like this that'll help you adjust your camber or your toe by turning these links. And guys, when you adjust your toe, if you put 2 turns on this side, put 2 turns on this side. 3, 3, 1, 1. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other to keep it centered, so your servo is not working against your caster. So try to keep that where you want it. And then we also have ride height that we measure with the ride height gauge. Now you could measure it with a ruler and a very small level, but it's going to be much more difficult. And if you really want a good racing program, you're going to need some calipers, these 2 tools, a toe gauge, so these 3 tools, a set of calipers, and a ruler never goes amiss. And then the little a wrench that'll come with your car. I think this one's from an Associated, and I just like it better than the Traxxas one. And you're always going to need one of these 4 ways to take wheels off and on to check things. But anyway, that's what you need to know about chassis setup in general. All right, now that we've covered the tools and the concepts, you can go online and find setup sheets for your particular vehicle on just about any kind of track, and you should be able to match what they recommend. And typically, that'll get you a really good starting place. You may find that your driving style, maybe you like the front end to turn over a little bit more to plant the outside tire. Maybe you don't like that at all. Maybe you don't want any body roll whatsoever. But you can adjust from there. But an online setup sheet's a really good thing to find, and you can just Google around till you turn up with that. But anyway, that's our nerdy science lesson for today. If you learned a little something, let me know in the comments. If I'm completely off base, let me know that in the comments too, and I will correct it online or on another video if you're correct and I'm wrong. But mainly, go out and have yourself a great day, and we'll catch you next time on RC Restomod.